Frank, how did the Mothers of Invention come about?
You mean the name? Because the record company refused to have a group on the label called the Mothers. They had talked to some people with help as progressive rock either.
How would you
In
describe
fact, a lot of times it's not even rock and roll at all. It just happens to be consumed by a rock and roll audience.
Exactly. His music it wasn't even really rock, but it was consumed by a rock audience. This guy was so cool.
You as a musician have had any influence on any of the bands that the list that we just went through?
That's always a possibility.
Can you, if you had to, or if I asked you to, and if you chose to answer the question, could you sum up Frank Zappa in a few sentences?
Which one?
I love Frank Zappa. I first discovered Frank Zappa when I was 9 years old. My dad had an old Mothers of Invention album. He wasn't a fan of the band. You got to understand, back in the 60s and 70s, a lot of people who like heard about Frank Zappa who didn't understand his artistry, they would buy the album just to see what the hype was about. And my dad had that album. And as I got older, I started learning about who he was and stuff like that. And I liked his opinion. Basically, he was there when music videos first became popular, and he was speaking out against music videos because it was kind of taken away from the artistry. Most of the videos, when music videos became popular for rock bands, it kind of ruined the talent, because instead of being talented musicians, people cared more about what kind of video you got. And he was always outspoken. He always spoke his mind. And he's a legend, man. And his son, Dweezil, is still around. I think he runs his estate. But Frank Zappa, man, you could literally spend the whole day watching his interviews. I mean, this guy was like, he's the perfect example of somebody who played by their own rules. He was in the music industry. He had to sell music to live, but he was doing everything by his own way. And that's why I like Frank Zappa. He's one of my heroes, man.
Well, I think that what we do is very impulsive, especially what we do on stage. You know, it's things happen that are based on emotional intensity, as the rock group that is. You know, it can be like this, it can be like that, it can be spread out like that.
Yeah, but Frank Zappa. And the thing about it is, he's like, he's been around for a long time. He's classically trained. A lot of times, like, he's classically trained, so he knows how to do classical music in addition to rock music, progressive music, whatever you want to call it. So when the classic theorists and the classic composers, when he would request to work with him, they would look at him and say, this guy doesn't know anything about classic music, but he did. He wrote a lot of compositions. I mean, Frank Zappa is one of the iconic titans of American culture. Rest in peace. Shout out Dweezil.